Hey, Rob here for Quadratec. Today, we're talking tire size. As you can see, I've got a handful of Wranglers behind me here with some examples of different size tires. Whether you specifically have that one size tire in mind, like you've absolutely got to have those 37s for your Jeep, or maybe you've just got a specific look in mind and you're not really sure what size tire that actually is. Today, I hope to answer those questions for you to make shopping for your next set of tires just a little bit easier. Now today we're specifically focusing on the 2018 and newer Jeep Wrangler JL platform. Of course, that's also going to carry over to the 20 newer Jeep Gladiator JT. And yes, I do have a JK Wrangler down there at the end, but we're going to get back to that in just a little bit. Now all the way down here on the end, you can see that I've got a stock size all-season tire. We've also got an upgrade still at the stock size. We've got a 33-inch tire, a 35, 37, and even a big 40-inch tire all the way down here at the end. And we're going to be talking about what's involved at fitting each one of these size tires on your Wrangler or your Gladiator. Now, of course, there are a number of benefits you can gain by installing a larger set of tires on your Jeep. First and foremost, let's face it, a bigger, more aggressive set of all-terrain or mud-terrain tires just looks cool. Who doesn't love the look of a Wrangler with a bigger set of tires on it? But it's also going to improve things like your handling and capability when you head off the pavement and out onto the trail. Now, there are a number of factors you should be thinking about before you upgrade to a larger size tire as well, and we're going to go over all those in just a minute. Why don't we go ahead and get started by taking a look at that stock size all-season style tire all the way down here on the end. Now, this tire is potentially what your Wrangler came out of the factory with, and it's really designed to be a jack of all trades. Good in the snow, in the rain, in the dry, and year-round, but really for on-road use, not necessarily heading off the pavement, which is something that the rest of these tires definitely have in mind. Now, before we dive in deeper, let's talk about how tires are measured. You have standard and metric measurements. Most of the tire sizes that you hear around Wranglers especially are going to be a standard measurement, a 33 by 1250 or a 37 by 1250. The first number, the 37 or the 35, that is the actual size, the diameter, the height of the tire from the ground. The second number, that 1250 or 1350, that's the width of the tire in inches. And the final number that you'll usually hear, 17, 18, 20, that's going to be the size of the wheel. Now, with a metric measurement, like we have with our stock example here, we've got a 245, 75, R17. Those three numbers, again, measure slightly differently. 245, our first number, is the width of our tire. The second number, however, that's 75, that's going to be the height of our sidewall as a percentage of the width of the tire. And finally, that third number, that's 17 or the 20, that again is going to be the size of the wheel that the tire is mounted onto. Now, our all-season example here is something that you're going to find on most SUVs, crossovers, and probably even some minivans out there. Not what you usually think of when a Wrangler comes to mind. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at a good upgrade to this stock size tire right here on our first Wrangler. Now, our first example on our Jeep here happens to be a Nitto Terra Grappler G2 all-terrain tire. This tire comes in at a 265/70 R17, which translates to the same 31.5-inch tall tire as that stock all-season tire. Now, because of that, it means there's not a lot of added cost besides the upfront cost of the tires, because we're not changing the size of the tire on this Wrangler. However, we are going to get a slightly more fitting tire for our Wrangler with an all-terrain, and it's going to do really well in all different types of terrain, hence the name of this tire. It's going to do great on the road, in the mud, the sand, and the snow, and it's going to be a really great option for someone that is headed off the pavement occasionally and just wants something a little bit more suited to their Wrangler. Now, if you want to go a step from here, our next example happens to be a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. So yes, it does have a slightly higher fender flare from the factory, giving it a little more clearance for a larger tire right out of the gate than our previous sport model. However, it's still wearing a set of stock size tires. The tires on this example here are a Falken Wild Peak mud terrain tire. They're a 285/70 R17 size, which translates to about a 33-inch tall tire. at about 11 inches wide. So we're getting slightly taller, slightly wider than our previous example. We've also jumped from an all-terrain to a mud terrain tire. Now this mud terrain is going to be much more suited for spending more of its life off the pavement, giving you better traction in muddy, rocky trails, and a little bit more ground clearance under the Jeep for more improvement, better handling when you're off-road, being able to tackle those obstacles a little bit easier. But because the Jeep has been designed to wear this size tire right out of the gate, well, that means you can still mount this size tire on a factory wheel. So your cost is still going to be very minimal to upgrade maybe your Sport Wrangler to a set of tires like on our Rubicon here from the factory. Now, if you want to go to the next step up from here, we can take a look at an example of a 35-inch tire. Now, the tire we have on here is a BFG all-terrain TA KO2 in a 315/70R17. Now, that translates to right about 35 inches tall at about 11 and a half inches of width. So we're getting slightly bigger and slightly wider than our last example. Now, this Wrangler happens to be another Rubicon with a higher fender flare than you would see on a Sport Wrangler. And I will tell you that you can fit this size tire on a Rubicon from the factory without any other modifications needed. Now, if you do have something like a Sport, Sahara, Overland, Wrangler, or Gladiator, it's time to start thinking about suspension upgrades, or at the very least, fender upgrades to give you the clearance needed for this larger tire. This Wrangler happens to have an AEV 2.5-inch dual sport suspension installed on it, so you can see we've got plenty of clearance for this oversized tire. Now, at this point, because we are starting to go wider, we also need to start thinking about ways to move that tire out to give you clearance so that there's no interference or rubbing when you're turning a vehicle with a wider tire like this. So that's going to mean that you'll either need a set of wheel spacers or an aftermarket wheel like we have here with less back spacing. It's going to move that wheel and tire out to give you the appropriate clearance. And with that suspension modification as well, we're getting plenty of room to articulate that axle through its range of motion when you're climbing over obstacles out on the trail. We are starting to get slightly bigger here at a point now where we're adding a significant addition to the unsprung rotational mass on the vehicle. This tire is getting heavier than that 31 for sure, which is going to do things that you're going to feel in your acceleration and braking. It's going to start to slow down a little bit. It takes a little more energy to get this tire moving. It's also going to take more time to slow this down when you're braking, increasing things like your braking distance. Now, if you want to take the next jump up, we can check out a 37-inch tire like we have right here. Now, this example happens to be on another Rubicon with the same AV 2.5-inch dual sport suspension that we had on our previous example, except this time we've got a little bit bigger tire here. We've got a Mickey Thompson Baja Boss all-terrain in a true 37 by 1250 R17 size. So we're standing 37 inches tall by 12.5 inches wide. Now, at this point, you really need to be considering a new set of wheels to run a tire this big. You really don't want to be wanting a wheel spacer, in my opinion, at this point. So we need to move that tire out to make clearance for it so we don't having any interference issues when you're turning, when you're articulating off-road. At this point, a suspension is definitely required, even on a Rubicon, to give you clearance for a 37-inch tire. And in my personal opinion, this is definitely a sweet spot for the new JL Wrangler Rubicon platform, as well as the JT Gladiator. A 37-inch tire is going to perform awesome for you off-road, allowing you to tackle those trails, have a great time when you're off-road, but still have really good on-road manners for you as well. This being an all-terrain style tire, still has a very aggressive tread pattern to handle all different types of terrain for you. Of course, you could go to a mud terrain tire if you're looking for something even a little more aggressive in the same size. Now, the next example I have for you here, it goes a little bit bigger, and we start talking about a lot more extremes, and that, of course, is a 40-inch tire that we have right over here. This is a JK Wrangler. This is the previous generation Wrangler to the JLs that we've been looking at so far. But the reason I brought this Jeep out here today is because it is already equipped with a set of 40-inch tall tires and everything that goes along with that. I didn't want to simply mount a set of 40-inch tall tires on one of these other Wranglers and bring it out here to show you, because at this point, you're really talking about a significant investment past simply the tires and maybe the wheels alone. Now this Jeep is wearing a set of Nitto trail grapplers that measure in at 40 by 1350 R17. So we're standing 40 inches tall, 13.5 inches wide on a 17-inch diameter wheel. Now one of the things that you'll notice with this wheel is the significant increase in the hub size as well as the number of lugs on there, because that's all things that you need to start considering with a tire in this size. A 40-inch tall tire, let's face it, it's going to be heavy. It's going to take a lot of energy to get that tire moving. It's also going to take a lot to stop a tire like this once it gets rolling. So that means you really need to start thinking about brake upgrades when you go up to a 40-inch tall tire. Now really the only reason you should be installing a tire this big is to see a significant improvement in off-road capability. We're getting massive improvements in ground clearance here, and this large diameter is going to easily crawl over those difficult obstacles when we're out on the trail. But because of that, if you were to throw a 40-inch tall tire on your stock axle, whether that be a Dana 30 or 35 or 44 in this new generation axle in the JL, well, if you're binding that tire up off-road, chances are you're eventually going to start breaking components. Not only do you need to think about re-gearing to be able to move this tire, but you need to be thinking about adding strength in new components to be able to stand up to turning reliably a tire this size. And that's why this Wrangler happens to be equipped with a set of Dana Ultimate 60 front and rear axles. The components in these axles are built to handle a tire of this size reliably so that you're not constantly breaking components when you're on the trails. We also have a very large brake package on this Jeep so that we can stop these tires once they get rolling. Now, while there is a lot of added investment in this, if you're going to be spending a lot of time off-road in your Jeep and tackling those trails, well, there's nothing better than running a large set of 40-inch diameter tires. Just everything to take in stride. As you want to go bigger, well, of course, you got to pay a little bit more for that. Now, if you guys want to get more information about any of the wheels, tires, or any components you see on these Jeeps today, you can click that info button to head over to quadratec.com. Of course, if you have any comments or questions about anything I talked about today, you can always leave those for me down in the comment section below or contact us directly at any of the options on the screen. And if you haven't already and you like these videos, do me a huge favor. Go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well as the notification icon so be sure to catch all of our latest videos. Till next time, I'm Rob. I'll see you guys out on the trail.